episode of Lean In Leander. I'm your host, Andrew Naudine, and this is actually a two-parter. I've broken up this episode into two bite-sized bits so that you have an opportunity to take in the full length and breadth of the subject matter that we have at hand. And that subject matter is the footage from the All In LISD Forum, which took place on September 10th. I had the pleasure of moderating that particular event, and All In LISD has been kind enough to let me work with that footage to edit down for these episodes here at Lean In Leander. Now, the format was pretty easy to understand. Basically, the questions that were asked of the candidates that chose to participate were given to them in advance. It was a total of 5 questions, and they had an opportunity to prepare their answers and would be given 2 minutes to answer those questions during the forum. So what I've done with these episodes is I've edited that down a bit. Now, keep in mind I did not change any of the context of the actual footage. And for those of you who might prefer to watch the raw footage unedited, you can actually go to All In LISD to get that information and to see that footage in its entirety. So what I did was I took that footage and I have put over some overlays of graphics and things of that nature just to help you as the viewer, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or one of the video channels, you can actually see the questions and read them for yourself. If you're listening to the audio portion of the podcast on its own, you'll hear those questions because we did state them at the forum itself, and I haven't edited that out. This is just a way to compress some of the timelines, but it's still rather long, which is the reason that I actually broke it into 2 parts. So with that, here is the first of the 2 parts, and so to get context, this was actually the start of the event, so the candidates went through a 2-minute introduction about themselves and then answered a couple of the questions, which is what's included in this episode. The next episode will pick up at about the halfway mark and take you through the end of the event itself. So, without further ado, here's part 1 of the All In LISD Forum, which took place last week. So with that, here is the second part of the LISD Candidate Forum. So that you have context on this episode, this is about the midway part through the forum. And then we go to the final questions, which were community submitted questions. At this point, the candidates still have 2 minutes to answer those questions, but those questions they were not aware of in advance. So these are answers directly in the forum based on the questions that were randomly drawn, as you will see. So without any further ado, here's part 2 of the All In LISD Candidate Forum.
All right, so question 4 is again another proposition item. This is Proposition B. Proposition B is a voter-approved tax rate election, or VATER, which provides additional funding to the district's day-to-day expenses while resulting in a lower total property tax rate from 2021-22. Explain your personal position on Prop B, the voter-approved tax rate election. Again, we'll start with Alexis.
Thank you. So school finance is obviously a very complex issue, right? We need experience in this and leading the way for these kind of complex times and finding formulas. And so Prop B keeps class sizes low, supports our teachers. If we fail this prop, it would be 458 teachers' jobs that would be have to cut, and then also keeps the neighborhood school concept in place, because if you needed to lay off 458 teachers, that's 2.24 high schools. I don't know how you do that. Or you do 6 middle schools or 4 elementaries, I think is the right numbers. So any number of that would be terrible. Or you look at 1 in 10 programs. And so which program do you want to cut? I don't want to cut programs. I want to grow programs in student choice and student voice. So I am voting yes on Prop A, or Prop B also, And because I really want to keep the best and brightest teachers, and I want to keep those supports for our classrooms and all of that for our community. So keep serving and keep having robust programs and choice for students, and all our campuses open and operating.
All right, Joseph.
Again, this is kind of an easy one for me. For Prop B, I personally will be voting yes. I think the biggest issue with Vader, it has a language issue, right? We've all seen Star Wars and we think Vader is a bad thing. But also just in the language, the way it'll appear on the ballot, all it says is that we're going to be raising a rate, right? It doesn't mention that there's going to be an equivalent decrease on the INS side of things. And it gets really complicated, and it's hard to like hold people's attention to explain, like, look, this goes down and that goes up and the whole thing. But the truth is, it's something that we need to do for the future of our students and for the district. Everybody's taxes are going up because all of our houses were worth half what they're worth now 2 years ago, which again, high class problem. Nobody. I'm not going to talk for everybody. I don't like the language the way, because it just says that there's an increase, but I don't see any other way for the district to continue to function without making cuts and meet the increasing demand and needs that our students, families, and community has. So I am a yes on Prop B.
Francesca?
I am also a yes on Prop B. Alexis is talking about all of the teachers that will be let go and the programs we're going to have to cut. Like I said earlier, I'm a special needs mom. I'm also a GT mom, a band mom. My kids are all up in all of the things. And I don't know how you decide which of these programs are not needed, because especially for my older son, it's not a want, it's a need. They're programs that he requires to be successful in his education. And if there are 485 less teachers, it's going to be those types of extraneous programs that are going to go first, at least in my estimate. That's not okay with me. I also think that the raise that the board gave to the teachers, they need that. We have asked an unbelievable amount of our educators over the last 2 years. And I do think that as a community, we should be coming together and getting them what they need. If that is the Vader, okay. It's a tax rate decrease for us. Like Joseph said, the ballot language is terrible, but we don't have any control over that. That's also another legislatively mandated requirement that we have. So it is a rate decrease. But it gives our teachers the raises they deserve. It keeps our programs intact. It keeps our class sizes small. So that is why I'm a yes for Vader.
All right, so Sade, and keep in mind these directional mics, so keep them closer.
Sorry, I get a little excited about this topic. I've written extensively about it on my Facebook page. So when it comes to Vader, I support Vader. It's the way that we get to keep our wonderful educators that have helped our kids and our district, our kids succeed and our district look so great in all of these academic and fine arts and athletic programs. If anything, we need to expand our programs, expand our programs, and make sure that there's something for everyone. I have actually seen people's taxes go down as a result of Beta. That's the dollar amount, not just the fact that our rate is going down. So I will highly recommend everybody go to texas.gov/property taxes. And you will find, first of all, that our debt side of the taxes, the INS, has already been reduced by over 13 cents. So that is a done deal, regardless of whether Vader passes or not. The other part is to get the operational dollars for our teachers. And so it's one side goes up, the other side goes down. The side you're going to see on the ballot is the side that's going up. You're not going to see the side that's going down. So that's how this works, and I definitely recommend everybody go to texas.gov/property taxes and see how your taxes will be impacted. And you will be surprised that it is in line with previous year changes, and we get to fund our schools. Over 70% of our dollars locally fund our schools. It's the state's not doing their part. And so that's why Central Texas, with our increase in cost of living, and then lower socioeconomic disadvantaged kids, we don't get so much help from the state, so we have to pick up the slack.
Thank you, Sade. Gloria?
So it is a complicated mess, our school funding system. And our tax rate is based on M&O, our maintenance and operation, and then the INS, which is interest and shrinking. And most people are like, I don't care, what does that mean? I don't know. What's happening on this ballot language is we're going to increase one side and decrease the other side. We're increasing the side that allows us to pay salaries. One of those sides, we can use the money to pay salary, the other we can't. So the tax language, we have to go for this voter election if we want to increase one of them. So what you're going to see on this ballot language is an increase. It's not accounting for the significant decrease in the other side. So overall, the tax rate is a reduction. So it's really important that we talk about that we let people know that. When this item came up for a board vote, we were talking about Vader and talking about our educators and how we were going to pay them. There was a lot of, discussion of, do we give 2% now and we give the 3% after the election, or do we do the 5% now and hope that this election passes? It was hard. It was a hard decision. And ultimately, I decided that we do it all now, because educators had to sign their contract now. And so I felt they needed to know that information. It was a bet. It was a gamble. It was a gamble. Either way, it was a gamble. We were going to lose teachers if we didn't. And so I made the gamble to vote on our educators. I made the gamble to support our community. I made the gamble to support our students. I need everyone to come out now and show that we do care about our schools. We care about our teachers. So I bet on us. We need y'all to show up.
Thank you, Gloria. Trish?
I don't want to speak after that mic drop.
Sorry, that's the order.
So I'm going to vote yes personally on Proposition B. And I'll tell you, when we get done and we let's say it all passes, you're like, okay, great, we solved all the problems. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We are trying to address a situation right now with our teachers, getting them funding, getting them the supports they need, but we are not done. We need to continue to advocate. And our legislative committee, Anna's on that, Alexis, I'm on there. We have been talking about the message needs to get to our lawmakers loud and clear that the way we've done public school funding is not going to keep helping us pay our teachers what they need. Our teachers are calling us and emailing us going, it's not enough. We know the environment right now is expensive with inflation. We know property taxes are going up. And we know there are challenges out there in the community. This is the system that the state's given us right now. So this is the best way, after the board had hours and hours and days of discussion that we went for. If you want to know, it's all on board book. Let me know. I'll send you links and timestamps. I think voting yes gets us to the next step. It does not solve the problem. Please, for our community who's here is engaged, don't stop. We need your help. We need to go talk to lawmakers. We have means that we need to fund public education. We need to fund our basic allotment properly. If we do these things properly, then we can fund our teachers the way they are. I love that we were able to give a 5% raise, but come on, y'all. Who's going to say that was enough? We're not done yet.
Thank you, Trish. Okay. There's no ranking on this. I know what we're here for. As a trustee, you make decisions that affect the education and community of tens of thousands of children. Give us an instance in which you thought that the board made the wrong decision, and how would you correct it? And Trish, you did first on this one.
So, I feel that our board spends a lot of time looking at the information, doing research, asking questions. Asking me this now, I would say that our board makes decisions with the information they have, and I think our board has done a phenomenal job of the cards that we've been dealt. I've been so appreciative of the hours that our board has put in. Hindsight, when you look back, would you want to change some things? Absolutely, there's hindsight. Now that I have more information, now that I see something. I think the officers, Alexis, Gloria, and I have talked a lot about how do we do good governance. Good governance means not necessarily that you make everyone happy, but are you looking at your whole system, the students, the parents, the teachers, your administration. You have all these parts of a will, and when you're making a decision, you need to stay in your lane, not the administrator's lane, not the parents' lane, not the students' lane. What is your lane? Are you looking at all the pieces, and are you making sure you weight those appropriately? If you don't do that, if there is a group or some bodies who says, I want this my way right now, and you don't consider everything else in that system, you're not doing good governance. And so I can look back and see instances where I'm like, I think good governance needed some extra help here. And I do have a timestamp and link there if you want to ask me. And there are things that I will continue to work on because I get that there are hard decisions. Trust me, we know hazardous routes, zoning. How many of y'all all shudder when I say that word? We don't always get to make everybody happy. It's how do we empower our students? How are we taking care of the students in the classroom? How do we all come together, have that discussion, and move forward? And when we stay in our lane and we do what we're supposed to do, when we empower our community to be on committees and to be engaged, and when we as a board do our job of making sure y'all are empowered, well, then it all works.
Thank you, Trish. Gloria?
That was perfect. This is a hard one because at that moment, you are making decisions based on the information you have. And there are times where we have the luxury of sitting there on the dais and asking for more information and asking for more time. And there are other times where we don't have that luxury. COVID took a lot of that luxury away from us. We were having meetings and we were making decisions. Right now, trying to save as much money as we can, we're also having to make decisions. And sometimes we don't have, all the information that we wish we had that evening or that week. And so hindsight is something. But I thought about this one a lot, and if I had to pick something, I still stand by the decision. I think the timeline was wrong, and that was the bell schedule. The bell schedule, it was brought to us, and we made a decision, and the decision was we knew we wanted to move to a triple tier bell schedule. Having a triple tier bell schedule means 3 different routes. That's less buses. That's less drivers. That's a whole lot less money. It's what large school districts do. How we roll that out, who goes first, who goes last, people are not going to like it. It's like rezoning. And with rezoning, we take a lot of time when we do that. We learned over the years that we need to communicate, and over-communicate that. The bell schedule, that one was newer. We didn't take enough time to communicate. So if I could go back, yes, I feel like we made the right decision overall in saving money and the process. I feel like the timeline was wrong. We should have waited for more money and then rolled out a more complete communication plan.
Thank you, Gloria. Shade?
Yeah, so they've captured like a minute and 45 seconds of my write-up. I have here, hindsight is 2020. I have here that we consider information. Okay, so jokes aside, in addition to the public information that we have and just being able to talk to our administrators and teachers and members of the public and the students and gathering input, and really using that to make some decisions. We also are guided and directed by state law, by other parameters that we don't have any control over. So there are times that personally or with what your community wants, you might want to go a specific way, but you can't. You just are restricted from going that way. So being able to communicate that kind of information. What I like though at the board meetings, we tend to explain our position so you know how we arrived at that conclusion. I can't think of anything specific that I would say that the board did wrong, but what I would say is going back to good governance is people trying to take all the necessary input from all the stakeholders, all the way from the state down to our local community, and making sure that we make the right decision with all those factors considered.
Thank you, Shade. Francesca?
I actually struggled with this question quite a bit. I don't know that I consider any decision to be just flat out wrong. I try to recognize that as somebody who is not on the board, they all have information that we all don't. They have insight that we don't. And I try to take that into consideration. Are there things that I would have done differently? I mean, you know, I'm a crossing guard. 10 minutes earlier for elementary school might not sound like a lot, but it's real early. It's real early. You know, I would have liked to see some of the early release Wednesdays left because I know our elementary teachers really loved those, but I still don't think that those decisions were wrong. Like Gloria and Trish both said, it was the best decision that the board made at the time with the information that they had. And that is oftentimes information that I, as a parent, don't. And I think that has to be taken into consideration before all the noise and all the yelling and all the anger comes out. Recognize that they're making decisions with information you don't have. And they're making information for 42,000 kids. So as much as I might not like getting up that much earlier because I'm not really a morning person, it works for other people. It works for the district. It's saved a lot of money. So you just have to take into consideration all of these extra things when you're thinking about whether or not that decision was right or wrong.
Thank you. Joseph?
I did not like this question. It is really the only question that took me more than like a few seconds to kind of like know instinctually like what I wanted to say. But I believe in the concept of grace, and I believe that anybody who steps up to serve at a public school, anybody who steps up to serve their community does so with the best of intentions in their heart. So I'm not going to stand on the sidelines and throw stones at decisions that were made before, right? If I had to pick something to criticize to some degree, it would be that noise. It would be not so much a decision that the board made, but the communication breakdown when it came to educating voters about the bonds. But I think the board has learned that lesson, the district's learned that lesson because of all the information I see getting passed along about these two very complicated propositions we have in front of us. I think it's something that they saw, that I saw, that is being addressed, and I'm happy that that's happened. And yeah, that's all I got.
You sure, Joseph? You got a little extra time with the noise. Thank you.
Yeah, this one is very difficult because you have to make a decision with the information at hand. And sometimes you don't have all the information. And sometimes you're asking questions of your staff and of your CFO or of your administration. What does this mean? And what does that mean? And how do we truly know the number? And sometimes those numbers make a difference. I'll point out for my personal board choice that I would have made differently would have been tying the Vader to raises versus not. And so super advocated for the 5%, which I appreciate, and I'm glad that was our outcome, right? Because we need to pay teachers appropriately. And I agree with that. And I think our sitting trustees have proven that. When HB3 went through and changed formula fundings, we gave a 7% raise to teachers. So we've proven we want to pay our educators appropriately and sustainably through inflation and things. So for me, that would have been a change because I don't think I had all the information. If we had known we had 600 to 700 contracts outstanding for teachers, that's an impact, right? That's something you need to know to make a decision. That they're waiting on that number. What's the final number? And so I think that would have changed my personal decision. I think as a board and serving on the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee, I've advocated for a long time to really look at maximizing facilities and campus usage and things. So I think we needed a little bit more time before going to the last bond to do that work beforehand. But coming out of that, we've done the work and we have a plan to really maximize facility usage, bring schools of choice and programs to our community and our students. And I'm really proud of that work, and I'm going to continue that work and see that come before the board and really be rolled out in an effective way in the next bond structure on what will be included and what won't be.
Thank you, Alexis. In this case, because this is a question that you did not get in advance, if you need me to read the question again before you answer, because 2 minutes, as you are now well aware, is quite a lot of time. So, all right, so with that, again, the attribution here is to Rebecca H., who submitted this question. There has been considerable discussion in recent years about the need for students, particularly students from minority populations, to feel respected and validated at LISD campuses. What steps do you feel LISD board should be taking to be certain the new policies that were implemented to address these needs are being utilized consistently and effectively across all campuses? So Gloria, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'll add one element there. When I was elected on the school board almost 4 years ago, I was the first Latina ever to serve on the school board. And a lot of times people say, wow, that's wonderful. And I say, no, it's not wonderful. I don't think it's wonderful that we have any of those firsts anymore. In a school district as large as we are, that representation is really important for our students. At that point, I became very involved with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, served on that committee, and helped with that committee to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy in our school district. It's a really robust policy. Not many school districts have a DEI policy. And it was during a time when people said, diversity, equity, and inclusion, oh, don't say that. Those are controversial words. And I say, what about diversity, equity, and inclusion are words that we should shy away from? Those are 3 beautiful words that I would hope everyone in our community would be ready to stand up for. What we've done since then is we've also, as a board, we approved a diversity, equity, and inclusion office. We hired our director of that department, and there are steps being taken with that committee, with that director's position of rolling those pieces out. It's slow. It's a slow process. You're working through issues and feelings and emotions that are highly personal. And in order for those to be effective and not met with opposition, you've got to take your time. You've got to have conversations. You've got to open dialogue with people. And so I will say that we're doing great work in this space. It may not be moving at the rate that some people want, but if we're moving at the rate that it has to move for it to be successful.
Thank you, Gloria. Okay, Alexis, the question goes to you.
So I believe as the board work that we've done together, we've done core values and we've done strategic planning. And I think you see really representative values that want us to serve each and every student. Valuing, empowering students, empowering educators, having safe and community, safe campuses. We've done that core value work And we really see that in a robust way that reaches out to all students. I would also say passing our very first strategic plan on this board was amazing, right? And also should not have been a first, but we did it and we passed it. And so that just shows our commitment to our students and our educators on really bringing them and valuing them and making them welcome on campus.
Thank you very much. Question now goes to Francesca. Again, remember these are directional mics, so keep them close to your mouth. You guys are getting passionate.
The first thing that I would say is ask the kids. These things are happening to the students. They're experiences of the students. Why aren't we asking them? Listen to them. They're braving board meetings, and if y'all have been to one or watched one, it's not the most welcoming atmosphere sometimes. But they're coming. They're going to these meetings and they're talking to the Board of Trustees and they're telling people, this is happening, this is what I experienced. So if we want to know if the policies are working, ask the people who are having these experiences that we need the policies for. Include them in the conversations. They can have them. I know it's uncomfortable. There you go. I know it's uncomfortable, and I know that it genuinely upsets people at times. But if we're not willing to move past that and to make sure that every single campus is doing what we have told these kids we're going to do for them, it's not going to get done. The conversations have to be had, and the kids should be included. It's their experience, it's their education, it's their classrooms. If we want to know if something is working, if something is happening, we should be asking them.
All right, Joseph, you will be next.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that's incredibly important to me. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe if elected, I will be the most heavily tattooed person. So that's another first. But in all seriousness, I work with people who are addicts, and I work with people who have mental health disorders. So I'm very used to working with groups that are sometimes marginalized, stigmatized, or not heard. In addition to that, I serve on the board of the State Texas Association for Addiction Professionals, and we, in the last few years, have undergone something very similar to where we created a DEI committee, did a survey of all the addiction professionals across the entire state of Texas to help understand how we are succeeding and how we had been failing in serving the communities of Texas. Now, the question was specifically about, how are we ensuring that these things are taking place? I believe in accountability. So, we have an office. I don't know exactly what accountability measures have been put in place to ensure that it's happening. But just like Francesca was talking about, we ask the students. We talk to the students. We create a process where we get the feedback from them. We get the feedback from the families. And then, if we need to, adjust the way that we're trying to incorporate the DEI initiatives.
Thank you. All right. Trish?
2 minutes, huh?
2 minutes.
This is layered. I'm going to try to hit. The first one, which you asked was very technical, something about to the effect of how do we as a board continue to monitor. And I will point out that one of the things the board has started is an in-depth look at all of our policies from A all the way B, C, D, and we have been diligent about doing that intentionally. And I expect, Gloria's on the policy committee, we're going to see more, chair of the policy committee, we'll see more movement, and as these policies come forward, that's going to be another check for the board. Another place, Alexis mentioned the strategic plan that we have. We also have a community-based accountability system. The accountability system isn't now just going to look at a star measurement. We're talking about how is student empowerment happening. We're going to be looking at the climate surveys. What do our students say? What's happening in our DEI office? So there's tons of information and things that the board has been very intentional to put in place and do checks. Now I'm halfway through that. Let me go to the other one. 'Tis the season to do block walking, And I was mentioning to somebody, and they asked me, tell me about this DEI thing. And I said, well, okay. I could pretty much tell the way you asked that, that you've heard things that bother you. And I think that's okay. In our community, if we hear something that we're not sure about, to say, explain this to me. Let's be curious with each other and ask questions. There's not a problem with that. Let's talk about what diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like in our district. It looks like we love and take care of each and every child. It looks like no children, none of them should have shame. It looks like we support and empower them to go be productive members of our community, because we already said they're going to be staying here. Let's talk about what DEI is. And if you go look on our website, you can actually go look what we talked about earlier, the state of the district. When you go look at it, and I explained what those concepts were, they're like, oh, well, this makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Trish. Sade, now, before you start, you do get the next question first, so.
Yes, finally get to me first. So, they mentioned quite a few things that I had on my mind when I heard this question. So, first of all, with the DEI office, we've actually got some anecdotal feedback from some educators who say that it's been very helpful, even people who had some preconceived notions, somewhat negative about what that office would be, but they were able to turn things around and explain to them how they really should be working with the kids and just getting things to work well for everyone. The community-based accountability system, I'm really looking forward to that, because to me, I look at it very closely with the equitable access as well, and making sure that it's all going well. The students are going to give us that feedback as to whether things are going well for them. And with every report that we get, whether it's going well or it's not, we need to pay attention and learn from it and make sure that we're not dropping the ball somewhere. So it's just having an outlet and having an opportunity for people to know that we're ready to hear from them, and that will be with the administration is ready to hear from them, and we as a board are ready to pick up whatever needs to be done when it comes to oversight. So it is a new office, a new practice, and I think we're going in the right direction. And another first too is I was the first Black person on the board as well.
This is attributed to Cynthia H. And the question is, with the rising cost of living in the Austin area and the lowest teacher salaries in all of the major metro areas in Texas, what will you do as a board member to attract and retain quality teachers who are looking elsewhere, such as Dallas, Houston, or San Antonio, in an effort to not have to work 2 to 3 jobs just to pay the bills? Sade? I told you.
No, but I like that. That was a good one. So it is definitely something that we've heard very much so from our teachers. We don't even need to hear directly. We already know that it's happening. That was one of the reasons why we're looking for more efficiencies in the system, whether it's with our expenses that we've really, really looked at very closely. And then now that's another issue that the beta is going to begin to address. There's a lot of advocacy going on from our board members, and just try to keep the public educated on what's going on, and that way they can advocate as well. One of the issues with our district specifically is that we have a low percentage of economically disadvantaged students, and that hurts the amount of funding that we get from the state. And so we as taxpayers we take on quite a bit of the burden of funding our schools, which some of these other districts don't have as much of that problem. We can get creative with our with the pay scale and find other opportunities for teachers within the district to make more. We can work on the pay scale, especially as it deals with their experience in teaching. and then just find other opportunities for them to be able to be of more service to the students and to other teachers, but also get paid for that.
Thank you, Shante. Trish, you will now have an opportunity to answer that question.
So I get to use some of my favorite words, multi-pronged, layered. There are so many things that we need to do to help our workforce and our teachers. And I want to point out, the question was about teachers, but remember, as a school district, 85% of our budget right now goes to our staff. That's our teachers, that's our CNS workers, that's our counselors, that's our mechanics, that's maintenance, it's custodial. I mean, the list can go on. There needs to be a mechanism for us, and not just one mechanism, several mechanisms, to be able to pay our employees well, but to also give them benefits to help them be able to do what they need to do, right? We say if we support and empower our workforce, then our kiddos are going to do better in learning. And that's absolutely true. Evidence and studies are out there. But we're talking about things like TRS Cares. The state is working on that right now. What does it look like when you retire? This is one funding question. What about your current pay? That's a second question. As a state, if you increased our pay to a basic allotment, then you'd automatically give our teachers raises. Well, what about the fact that the state right now pays our school district to address a lot? How can we manage? How can we keep paying our staff benefits? What are the things we can do? Then let's think outside of the box, and we need to continue to have those discussions, definitely. But let's not forget how important we need the state to address.
Thank you, Trish. Joseph, the question is now yours.
So I currently employ about 150 people in Austin, Texas, and they don't all live in Austin, and their pay ranges range from $14 an hour to $70,000, $80,000 a year, depending on their positions. And the one thing they all have in common is that everybody always wants more money. As a school district, and as an employer, right? Money doesn't just grow on trees, right? We can't just give people more money just because, it has to come from somewhere. But I've learned in managing my team that people care about more than just money as well. Do I think we need to continue to give teachers raises? Absolutely. But people value working in an environment where they feel heard. They value working in an environment where they are pulled with a vision, where their values are honored, where they feel respected, where they feel safe when they go to work, and that they're not going to be attacked, and that their leadership has their back if they make a mistake. These are all things that we can start to do without, before we have access to more money to pay our teachers. So that would be kind of my approach to what was asked, is making sure that we do all these other kind of less tangible things to make teachers happy and empower them and create a stronger community within LISD and the district as well. Thank you.
Francesca?
I agree with a lot of that, actually. Our educators are professionals. They're experts in their field. They know what they're doing, and they should be treated as such. And that's not just to say our teachers, that's our counselors, our librarians, our instructional assistants. They all are professionals. And if they're not valued as professionals, they're going to go find a district where they are. And that doesn't necessarily mean money. Because Trish is absolutely right. We need very loud and very insistent advocacy at the state level. Because our schools are not funded. They're just not. And that's not coming from local districts. That is not coming from the state. They are not doing what they could be. Imagine if we got to keep that $35 million from recapture. Imagine what we could do for educators with that money if the state would fund us not at 45th in the nation. But unfortunately, a lot of that isn't under local control. They've taken that away. So we have to work within what we have. And I agree with Joseph that primarily we have to start backing our educators loudly. We have to make sure that they know we trust them to do their jobs. We think they're doing their jobs well, and we want them to stay and continue to do those jobs with us, because my kids spend more time with their teachers during the day than they do with me, which I know at least one of them is very excited about that. They are impacting my kid's life just as much as our family and our friends do. They should be valued for that. They should be valued for what they are giving our kids. And that's just as much about respect as it is money.
All right, thank you. Alexis?
Can you read that one more time?
Certainly. Again, the attribution here is to Cynthia H. With the rising cost of living in the Austin area and the lowest teacher salaries in all of the metro areas in Texas, what will you do as a board member to attract and retain quality teachers who are looking elsewhere in an effort to not have to work 2 to 3 jobs just to pay the bills?
Okay, thank you. So part of the work on the legislative committee has been critical. We've really made sure to make our legislative priorities advocate for teacher raises and pays. In Central Texas and Austin area, it's some of the highest living costs in the state. Yet we're not funded like the other metroplexes. We're not funded like Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. They get a bump in their cost of living and adjustments for teacher pay raises or salaries. So we really have to advocate at the state legislature and have those hard conversations. I know Trish and I are having those conversations right now. As a committee, we're meeting with our state reps and our representatives next week in order to really educate and say, Austin's not like it was in the 90s. And when you made that formula, that's when they created that formula, was in the 90s. And they've never gone back and looked at it to recalculate for inflation and cost of living here in Central Texas. So that's a critical piece of work that we're working on actively and having those conversations in order to say, you've got to bring our teachers up because their cost of living is much higher than Dallas now. Also understanding just that school finance piece and working through that is so important, and that experience matters, and that having those conversations is part of that key development and work at the state level.
Okay. Gloria, you get to close it out on this question.
I don't like going last.
Now you feel Sade's
So first, yes, we need to pay our teachers more. We need to pay all of our staff more. And yes, we need to retain good teachers and we need to recruit good teachers. And that's not just going to be with money. It's going to be with respect. It's going to be with trust. It's going to be with support. At the same time, you can give your teachers all the support and respect and trust. If they cannot pay the bills, they simply cannot pay the bills. And so I do feel that trustees, specifically in Central Texas, they own a bigger responsibility to be at the Capitol and to be talking to legislators and to be advocating for public schools, to be advocating for public education. Right now, the last survey that went out from the American Federation of Teachers showed that over 60% of teachers in Texas are considering leaving the profession. And the reasons that you look at are those two combined. It's teacher pay, and it's also the lack of respect, the lack of trust. And so we know that we've got to do better in both of those places. I will say Leander ISD is doing a great job on teacher retention and recruiting new teachers. If you look in the region, the amount of vacancies we have is lower. But it's going to be really important for us to continue advocating during legislative session. When we were talking, one of the earlier questions of what are my core areas, what do I think is most important, and if I had to pick one, it was students. We cannot put students first if we put teachers last. It doesn't work that way. So we all need to make sure that we're advocating for our schools if we want to continue putting students first.
Thank you, Gloria. Okay, so
So here endeth part 2 of All In LISD Candidate Forums on the Lean In Leander podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed the formatting here and that it's made it a little bit easier for you to digest the information provided. Again, thank you so much to All In LISD for offering me the opportunity to moderate that particular event. I had a really enjoyable time and really enjoyed getting the candidate feedback and the community feedback. It was a really nice way to get to know your neighbors. So anytime you have an opportunity to attend one of these, I definitely encourage you to do this type of thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be All In LISD, but get out there and understand what's going on in your community and better understand the issues that are making a difference to the way you live your life, because believe it or not, it does. And the best way to make sure that your voice is being heard is to, of course, register and vote. So I believe you have until the 11th to get that registration done. So get yourself registered, participate in the democracy that is around us, specifically here in your local area, because that's where it really does make a difference. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you all tuning in to the podcast. Again, for the candidates who did not participate in the forum, All In LISD has allowed for me to take those very same questions and give you an opportunity to answer them in the Lean In Leander format here on the podcast. So if you're interested in doing so, feel free to reach out to me. You can jump on my website. There's plenty of contact information there, and I'll get back to you and we'll coordinate the particulars. So thank you again for going on this journey with me. I appreciate your attendance and certainly look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Lean In Leander. Bye, folks.